The night was unusually harsh for early spring. Sophia wrapped her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders as she listened to the wind howl outside. Her mother was asleep in the corner of the dimly lit room, her breathing shallow and raspy, a result of years of untreated asthma. A pot of lentils simmered quietly on the small gas burner, its smell not strong enough to overpower the dampness that clung to the room's cracked walls. This was their home: one room, a small stove, 2 worn-out mattresses, and a wooden table with one leg shorter than the others. It wasn't much, but it was all Sophia could afford after paying for her mother's medication and her own sewing supplies. She had just sat down with a piece of stale bread when a knock echoed through the night. She froze. Nobody ever knocked at this hour. Not here. Her heart raced as she tiptoed to the door, careful not to wake her mother. She peeked through the narrow curtain covering the small window and saw a man outside. He was tall, soaked to the bone, and clutching the hand of a little boy whose shoes squished in puddles as he shifted from foot to foot. Sophia hesitated. This part of town wasn't safe. But something about the man's posture wasn't threatening. He looked tired. Desperate, even. She slowly unlatched the door and opened it just enough to see his face. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice deep, his accent difficult to place. "We've been walking for hours. My car broke down somewhere near the highway, and everything around here's closed. I didn't mean to scare you. Just, my son, he's cold, and we need shelter. Just for a little while." Sophia's eyes dropped to the child. The boy's cheeks were flushed red, his tiny fingers wrapped tightly around the man's hand. He couldn't have been older than 7. He looked up at her, not with fear, but with quiet hope. She bit her lip. She had no extra food, no spare bed, barely enough heat. But she also knew what it felt like to be turned away when you needed help most. Sophia stepped aside. "You can come in, but I don't have much." The man nodded, grateful. "Thank you." They entered slowly, careful not to drip too much water on the thin rug by the door. Sophia handed them both old towels and motioned for them to sit near the stove. "I'm Sophia," she said after a moment, stirring the lentils. "I'm Thomas," the man replied. "And this is my son, Eli." Eli gave a shy smile and waved. Sophia split the small meal into 3 portions, barely enough for one hungry adult, but she did her best. The boy devoured his share in silence, his eyes growing heavier with each bite. "You live here alone?" Thomas asked gently, his tone cautious. "With my mother," Sophia replied. "She's sick. I work as a seamstress. It's not much, but it keeps us going." Thomas nodded, listening intently. He didn't offer much about himself. Just that he and Eli had been traveling, and an unexpected breakdown had left them stranded. No one else had opened their doors. "It's dangerous to let strangers in," he said softly. "Why did you?" Sophia looked at him, her eyes calm. "Because the world's already hard enough. If I can make one night easier for someone, I will." Thomas fell quiet, watching her with an unreadable expression. Later that night, they laid out makeshift bedding on the floor. Sophia gave the boy her own pillow and watched him drift to sleep with a full stomach and a warm blanket, 2 things not everyone had, even in their own homes. Before she turned away, Eli murmured, "You're nice." "Not everyone is." Sophia's throat tightened. "Kindness is free," she whispered. "And maybe one day, it comes back to you." Thomas watched her from the shadows, saying nothing. But deep inside, something shifted. He'd met thousands of people, partners, investors, executives, but rarely someone who gave without expecting anything in return. As rain tapped gently on the tin roof, Sophia curled up on her thin mattress and prayed that tomorrow would bring a little more light. She had no idea that the 2 strangers she had let in would soon change everything. The next morning, the apartment was unusually silent. Sophia sat up slowly, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. The rain had stopped, and the first hints of golden sunlight peeked through the cracked window pane. She turned to check on her guests, but the space beside the stove was empty. The towels were neatly folded, the blankets arranged, and there was no sign of Thomas or little Eli. She blinked in confusion. Had they really just left? No goodbye. Then she noticed a small envelope on the table. With hesitant fingers, she picked it up and opened it. Inside was a folded note written in clean, neat handwriting. "Greater than Sophia, thank you for opening your door, and your heart, to 2 strangers. You didn't know who we were, and you didn't ask. You just gave. That's rare. You'll hear from me again very soon. Until then, keep believing in your dreams. Sophia stood there frozen, reading the note over and over again. It felt surreal. Who were they really? The man had barely spoken about himself. There was no contact number, no last name, just a promise that felt more like a mystery. Days passed, then a week, then two. Life returned to its usual rhythm. Sophia spent her days mending clothes, taking sewing orders from neighbors, and caring for her mother. But something had shifted in her. Each time she passed the table, she glanced at the note, carefully pinned on the wall beside her mother's medicine shelf. One day, as she returned from the market carrying a bundle of fabric, she noticed a sleek black car parked just outside her building. Its shiny surface gleamed under the sun, utterly out of place in her rundown neighborhood. Two men in sharp suits stood by the vehicle, scanning the building's entrance like they were waiting for someone important. She walked cautiously, her worn sandals slapping softly on the pavement. "Are you Sophia Alam?" one of the men asked as she approached. "Yes," she replied slowly, tightening her grip on the fabric. "Why, you've been invited to meet Mr. Thomas Wellington." The name meant nothing to her. She furrowed her brow. "I don't know any Mr. Wellington." Before they could reply, the rear door of the car opened, and out stepped Thomas. Except now he wasn't the rain-soaked stranger in worn jeans and a wet coat. He was dressed in a navy blue suit, polished shoes, and wore a calm, confident smile. He looked powerful, composed, and completely unrecognizable, except for those same kind eyes. "Thomas," Sophia breathed. "Yes," he said gently. "Though most people know me as Thomas Wellington, CEO of Wellington Holdings." Her mouth fell open. You're the head of that company on TV. The one with the tech campuses and factories overseas." He nodded. "You're a millionaire." "Billionaire, actually," he said with a modest chuckle. "But labels aside, what matters more is what you did. You gave shelter to someone you thought had nothing to offer you. You fed my son without asking a single question. That kind of heart, it deserves everything." "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why would someone like you come here, and why now?" "I was driving through the area that night after visiting one of our regional sites. The storm forced us to stop. Every hotel was full, every door closed, until yours. That night reminded me that money means nothing if you forget what it's like to be helped by someone with nothing." Sophia's thoughts were a whirlwind. She looked down at her worn clothes, her trembling hands. "I'm not anyone important." "That's where you're wrong," he said, stepping closer. "You reminded me what real value looks like. Which is why I'm here to offer you a chance." She blinked. "A chance? I want to invest in your dream, Sophia. You spoke about starting your own tailoring shop that night. I'd like to help make that happen. Fully funded, fully yours." Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly looked away, ashamed. "Why me?" Thomas smiled. "Because the world needs more people like you. And sometimes, kindness really does come back." Behind him, the car door opened again, and Eli stepped out holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. He ran to her and held them out with a grin. "For you, like you gave us food." Sophia took the flowers, her hands trembling. In that moment, everything changed.